When it comes to world-class travel, Singapore Airlines takes the accolade, winning award after award for its exemplary product across all cabin classes. It's almost hard for me to believe that this absolute unit of an airline hails from the tiny island of Singapore. In today's video, we're going to be exploring the Singapore Airlines business class product from Singapore direct to Colombo in business class. On the airline's dreadful nighttime service, where
I really am rallying the last two brain cells to get this trip report going. I'm so exhausted.
we will also take a comprehensive look at their Silvercrest lounge, the in-flight product, and my encounter with some of the friendliest cabin crew I have ever flown with. Alright, so before everything, I initially booked this flight in economy class, paying extra for their extra legroom seat. However, on the eve of this flight, the opportunity arose for me to upgrade on this flight for about 765 AUD. Now, given that the actual one-way business class fare on this sector is about 1500 Singapore dollars, I knew that this was a bit of a steal. The only problem was I had already booked my extra legroom seat. Anyway, after what was possibly the most tedious set of phone calls, me trying to explain to their call center staff that I wanted this seat refunded so I could buy this seat, they eventually, after a series of misunderstandings, agreed to release my economy class seat with a refund, and I finally secured 19k for the flight after paying 765 Australian dollars. And now that that's out of the way, let's get on with the rest of the trip report. Alright, so welcome to Changi Airport in Singapore. If you're flying to one of these destinations, your flights will depart from Terminal 2. If not, your flights will take off from Terminal 3. So I went to the service desk and I asked the guy there where the Silvercrest lounge was, and he said, your flight is departing from Terminal 2, so go to Terminal 2. He then gave me a detailed explanation of how to find the lounge, so off we go. Now, Changi Airport has a bunch of SkyTrains that run in between each terminal, and it's the most convenient way to connect unless you want to shred some calories and walk. Yes, that's doable, and yes, I've done that before. Eventually, remembering the instructions I'd been given, I found the Silvercrest lounge. A very friendly lounge attendant scanned my boarding pass and let me into the lounge. Now, this lounge, in my humble opinion, is the less impressive of the two lounges. Yes, there's two lounges in Singapore. It features things that you would typically expect to see in a lounge, like a seating area, charging ports, and a couple of accessories. Now, bear in mind that at this point, I was still under the impression that I could only access one lounge since I was leaving from Terminal 2. The lounge also features a full-fledged buffet with a diverse range of food options, including a laksa that's quite famous across Singapore Airlines fan groups. Here's the drawback though, the lounge just isn't giving world class. Seating area feels a bit crowded and the lounge is definitely showing its age. After a while, I asked the attendant if I was allowed to access the lounge in Terminal 3 and she said absolutely, so off we go. Now, this is the flagship lounge. You get that vibe just by walking past the lounge. It has a prestigious display showing passengers where to go. Now, the first thing you notice about the lounge is the spacious seating area. Unbeknownst to me, however, that's just one side of it, which I'll cover for now. You'll also notice that there's a bar, a selection of sandwiches, and an excellent buffet. Apparently, TWG is such a popular brand that people steal the sachets from the lounge, which I think is the funniest thing I've ever heard of. Now, I found one of these sitting pods that are kind of located at the side of the seating area and sat down. Before long, a friendly lounge attendant came by and asked me where I was from. I told him that I was from Australia and he said, "Oh, that's so nice. Where in Australia are you from?" Now, for some reason, I didn't say Hobart, not because I'm ashamed of being Tasmanian or anything like that. I promise you I'm not, but I stuttered and said Melbourne, which is where I had flown in from. To which he said, "Melbourne. Very nice," and he collected my plates, and I thought that would be the last I see of him. At about 5:30, I thought it might be a good idea for me to doze off, until the same guy from last time woke me up and said, "Excuse me sir, I have a great idea. Why don't you use the sleeping pods? I'll get one of my colleagues to walk you there." So now I was getting escorted to a place where I could potentially have a decent nap. Now, these sleeping pods are actually located at the far end of the other seating area, which should give you an idea of how big this lounge actually is. Now, the left side of the lounge is kind of an improved version of the right side of the lounge. It actually has a bigger seating area and a more diverse buffet. Now these sleeping pods are not the most comfortable, at least for me they weren't, because they've got this weird curvature, but I did manage to shut my eyes for a tad. At the time this didn't occur to me, but retrospectively I realized how nice the lounge attendant had been by suggesting this place to me and having his colleagues escort me here. I eventually woke up, and one thing that I really wanted to do was have a shower before my flight, but apparently there was a line of users in front of me, so they gave me this. Eventually it buzzed and I got to go check the showers out. In a desperate bid to stop myself from sleeping, this iced latte was my last course of action. So long, Silvercrest Lounge, it's been a good 6 hours. Singapore Airlines has served Colombo since the very early onset of its operations in 1972. Way back then, the fleet wasn't as sophisticated, but its commitment to Colombo was always resolute. In fact, it remained one of the few foreign carriers to serve Colombo during the height of Sri Lanka's civil war. Now, Singapore Airlines primarily enlisted their 777s and A330s to serve Colombo, and that was kind of what Colombo expected from 2000 to 2018. But then in 2019, the A350 took over and ran the sector up until 2023, where the 787 was deployed to run this sector, and that's where we are today. Welcome to Gate F58, where our steed to Colombo is ready to take us. Now it takes about 3 hours and 10 minutes to connect the two ports, and this is a daily operation that the airline runs with the 787 Dreamliner. The crew this evening will work the outbound SQ468 flight and turn around back to Singapore, touching down at 7:20 the following day. While I was passing security, some kid ran through the detector. The security guard looked at me and said, "Your kid can't run through." I looked him in the eye and said, "That's not my kid, man. I'm 25. Please don't put that responsibility on me." And he just burst out laughing. As you can see, it's quite an empty holding room, and that's because the ground staff finished all boarding groups in like 5 minutes. Our seat this evening is 19 kilo. The first thing you notice is how wide the seat is, yet simultaneously providing you with the privacy that you need. The TV monitor is massive, and it leads you down to a footrest that serves minimal purpose when your seat is upright, unless you're like 6'4", but it becomes extremely handy when you engage the lie flat function. Your seat also comes with 3 reading lights, a controller for your in-flight entertainment, and a tray table extending a fair length in. Now, unlike the flimsy earphones you get in economy class, you get a fairly decent pair of noise-cancelling headphones. Now, my only real issue here is that the 787s are starting to show their age. Now, not long after I sat down, a very polite gentleman crew came up to me and said, "Excuse me sir, can I offer you a welcome drink?" I asked for a glass of orange juice, and he ever so carefully placed the glass down on my cup holder. I also saw the same guy walking up and down the cabin with the biggest smile on his face. Did no one tell him that this was a red-eye turnaround for him? I'm just kidding, but it was very nice to see an enthusiastic set of crew on board. Now, the menu really features a diverse selection of food. I couldn't really book the cook for my flight because I had already checked in prior to paying for my upgrade, and eventually when I figured out how to cancel my check-in, it was a little bit too late for me to book the cook. So I'll be using their a la carte menu for this flight.
For the appetizer, they've got marinated prawns, and then for the main course, they've got pan-fried chicken or braised lamb, and then for the dessert, they've got pistachio and almond. Something that I can't pronounce.
You're going to be waiting a while for my two brain cells to figure out how to pronounce half of the things on that menu. However, I may as well cover the book the cook function. Now, this is a function that Singapore Airlines has for its premium class passengers to access a diverse and comprehensive menu. It's available on all flights leaving Singapore and a number of these routes as well. Now, since I was traveling with food poisoning, all of those options would have been a bit too ambitious for me. And to that extent, the pan-fried chicken seemed like one of the safer bets for me. The leading stewardess came down the aisle and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Nilesh, I can see you looking at the menu. Do you know what you'd like to have for dinner?" I opted for the pan-fried chicken and she left, and shortly afterwards they came back down the aisle with their classic hot towel service.
Board off at SQ468 from Singapore to Colombo. And I'm introduced the crew working for today. In the cockpit with me is First Officer Jeremy Tan, and in the cabin with you are the cabin crew. And in-flight supervisor today is Mr. Jason Su. Flight time to Colombo, we can expect about 3 hours and 10 minutes. And for the weather forecast en route, I can say it's really fair. Occasional bumpy condition can be expected along the way. That is due to the change in wind condition. So for your safety during the flight itself, please have a seatbelt fastened. Do observe the seatbelt sign above you. And for right now, when the seatbelt signs are switched on, cabin services will be suspended. And for that is due to the safety of the cabin crew and also for yourself. So we seek your understanding for this new procedure that we are practicing right now. For the track, we'll be taking basically north west, and for those who are interested in the geographic interest along the way, that will be available in the Voyager app in front of you as well. And before our descent towards Colombo, First Officer Jeremy Tan will get back to you for the updated landing time when itself. So meanwhile, I invite you to sit back, relax, enjoy the midnight service, and entertain on board once they get you board choosing Singapore Airlines.
We're pleased to be carrying passengers about Airline flight. All electronic devices is now the put in flight safe mode. Please approach our cabin crew if you require assistance. We wish you a pleasant flight.
Now, Singapore Airlines has the complimentary Wi-Fi function for, well, technically everyone. In economy class, you access the Wi-Fi function by having a ChrisWorld account, and if you're in business class, you get it regardless. All you've got to do is enter your seat number and your last name. Eventually, we connected, so it was time for me to check if the Wi-Fi function actually worked, and I'm pleased to report that on this flight, it did. As far as the ChrisWorld entertainment system goes, there is a fairly comprehensive selection to choose from. Now, I think the airline rotates this offering every month, and they release a sort of teaser promotion telling you what you can access. Shortly after takeoff, the leading stewardess came and placed a dining cloth over my tray table and placed the appetizer down. This is the marinated prawn salad. It has potatoes, pickled onion, a hard-boiled egg, black olives, and a Dijon herb dressing. This was a delicious entree. I think the thing that I liked the most was the Dijon herb dressing that they drizzled over the salad, but not in an overpowering way by any means. The entrees usually get served with a selection of breads from the bakery.
This is my favorite as well. Oh, okay. Alright, thank you. Enjoy. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Up next, we've got pan-fried chicken for the main course. Honestly, the least descriptive of the three options, given that the lamb and seafood options had a thesis written about them in the description, but the pan-fried chicken just had this. Anywho, it's zucchini and turnip ribbons, baby carrots, and roasted sauncho. Not what I would have typically opted for, but if you watched my previous flight from Melbourne, you'd know why I was going for all the flavor-ghosted options. Even this meal was probably really pushing it, but it was quite nice, wasn't spicy, and pan-fried to perfection. Now, I'm not a big wine drinker. I think once you attend residential college in Australia and rely on boxed wine for your entire freshman year, you sort of ruin the experience for the rest of your life. So I ordered apple juice like a little beta male. Finally, for dessert, we've got pistachio and almond bavarois with sour cherry compote. Now, I'm not a huge pistachio fan, and I was a little skeptic when I saw this on the menu, but let me tell you that this was actually the highlight of my entire 3-course meal. I actually inhaled the thing in under 2 minutes. Even the crew was surprised by how fast that was gone, and I was so tempted to ask for another one. I just didn't want to come across as being greedy. Now, the lavatories get stocked with a lot of amenities, and this one was kept very clean right throughout the flight. The sinks are functional, and there's also a coat hook and a clean mirror. More importantly, for this regional configuration 787, the toilet is very spacious. After freshening up, it was time for me to have a little nap. Now, the lie flat function is accessible from the side panel, and you just need to hold down the button to your desired recline, or you can hold it all the way down to access the actual lie flat function. Having been happily fed, and with less than an hour and 15 minutes left of flying time, it was time for a quick nap. During my BTC conundrum following my upgrade, I wasn't really planning on calling the call center again because of my horrible experience with them a few hours before. However, I knew that there was one place I could definitely trust, and that's this group. Run by a few hardcore Singapore Airlines fans, it's a group of people from all over the world that literally talk about how much they love Singapore Airlines. But a lot of these members are actually God tier SQ status holders, and I was able to reach out to them to find out how to rectify my BTC conundrum, and a few legends jumped in to help me out. So if you're ever confused with your Singapore Airlines booking, there's absolutely no harm in posting it on one of these forums. Now, as we get closer to Colombo, I can't help think about what a fantastic flight this has been. My maiden flight with Singapore Airlines in business class, and yes, perhaps I couldn't experience the full-fledged version of it because I wasn't feeling too great, but I still had a remarkable time on board. Stay tuned to the very end of this video to find out how the airline scored overall on 5 criteria, scored from 1 being mediocre to 5 being excellent. I'll let you enjoy the landing for now, but don't go anywhere.
Capital landing station, please. Thank you.
So my favorite aspects of the flight included the very nice and happy to serve cabin crew, the Silvercrest lounge, specifically the one in T3, and the in-flight entertainment system. However, I feel like the call centers could use a lot more work. That being said, here is the final score for today's flight. Any and all information pertaining to this flight, including how much I paid for it, can be found in the description. And while you're down there sussing those deets out, subscribe and hit the bell button icon to never miss out. That's all for now, have a pleasant day, and I'll see you in another video.